Amazing transformation. Millionaire discovers touching prayer of a street child. Truly inspiring. John Mitchell, the titan of tech, sat poised at the helm of his billion-dollar startup, the glow of the downtown Chicago skyline reflecting off his glassy penthouse office walls. High above the city, he had it all: money, influence, and a Rolodex stuffed with the names of other powerful men. He'd fought tooth and nail in ruthless board meetings. Yet as he stared out at the luminous city lights, he felt a profound emptiness gnawing at his soul. Riches felt hollow when weighed against the price of his connections, the laughter of friends long replaced by the sterile silence of success. There was something oppressive about the weight of power that suffocated him. Gazing down at the bustling streets, John wrestled with an unsettling truth. The vendors below cried out, their voices a stark reminder of suffering, of lives spent trying to make ends meet in stark contrast to his gilded existence. Could he truly claim to lead without a conscience, without connecting to this humanity below? He blinked, swallowing guilt as he grappled with the emptiness in his chest. On a lark, he chose to step away from the weight of responsibility and take a walk. Each step pulled him further from the world of boardrooms and investors, and as he ventured deeper into the maze of humanity, he felt an ache swelling in his heart, yearning for something he wasn't even sure he knew he had lost. It was in this moment of vulnerable exploration that he stumbled across Sam, a dirt-smudged street child kneeling on the pavement, clutching his hands together as if weaving hope into the fibers of the night air with a whispered prayer. Though their worlds were galaxies apart, John approached the child, hesitantly igniting a conversation that quickly transformed into a mirror, reflecting every struggle he'd carelessly ignored. Sam spoke of his dreams, paints and brushes rather than asphalt and endless hardship. His words dripped with sincerity, burning through John's facade of indifference. As Sam's dream washed over him, images of his own childhood flooded his mind. Memories of his parents, their tireless dedication, the unyielding values imbued in him, crashed against the success he had chased, leaving him dizzy in its wake. Suddenly, the thrill of corporate victories felt insufferably superficial. A visceral pang of guilt clawed at his core as he confronted the moral dilemma before him: pursue wealth that rendered him unfulfilled, or dedicate himself to something greater, something he once stood for. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet, the choice of mentorship wasn't free from complications. John's idea to launch an art scholarship in Sam's name bloomed feverishly, a beacon of hope against neglect, yet the shadows of his past loomed heavy. A media outlet, a vengeful adversary seeking to tear down the fragile foundation he planned to build, unraveled a deluge of hidden faults. The starlit image he had meticulously created shattered under the weight of public scorn. How could he restore his tarnished image when the very foundation of his renewal was tainted by old sins? As questions gnawed at him, John's once clear vision narrowed into a labyrinthine alley of anxiety. The pressure mounted, heart racing as Sam's unwavering dream collided with his fraying reputation. John was left to wrestle between the echoes of his failure and the call for transformation, fighting for a child's hope against an unforgiving world. Would he choose the safety of his sanitized success? Or would he finally embrace the uncertain beauty of redemption for a child he barely understood, propelled by his own haunting past? The stakes felt insurmountable as John became acutely aware. The path forward was fraught with anguish, teetering on the precipice of moral reckoning. In the days following his encounter with Sam, John found himself grappling with a sense of urgency. Purpose felt like a distant horizon, ever elusive, and yet it burned bright in his mind like a beacon guiding him toward a new path. He wrestled with the implications of launching the art scholarship, each thought laced with doubt. How could he gain the public's trust when they only saw the shadow of his past sins? John threw himself into strategizing. Hours turned into days as he prepared a public statement on the scholarship. At first, the words felt heavy, laden with his fears, as if confessing a crime rather than unveiling a vision of hope. But he persisted, each keystroke setting forth a tangible commitment to change. He envisioned a future where he could reshape his image, not just in the eyes of the public, but within himself. With every crafted sentence, he attempted to peel away the layers of his old life. The narrative he finally embraced was one of vulnerability and responsibility. Instead of concealing his flaws, he announced them, casting his past misdeeds into the stark light of day. Could humility be the anchor that steadied his frazzled nerves? This idea resonated with him, unearthing an unexpected strength. And yet, pushing send felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. He fortified his resolve by visiting Sam regularly. Their conversations became a wellspring of inspiration, filled with art, laughter, and unabashed honesty. Sam poured out the dreams he had, his youthful exuberance reigniting a flicker of creativity in John. They painted together on tattered sheets of cardboard, breathing life into a world that seemed intent on stifling it. The child drew abstract shapes and muddled colors, vibrant against the starkness of his reality. John felt a sense of liberation, free as he merged within Sam's imagination. Yet, as the scholarship announcement date drew near, whispers of opposition echoed in the back of his mind. Would the media truly turn their backs on scandal? Conversations with his advisors grew increasingly tense. They urged caution, warning against placing all his bets on a charitable endeavor. Some questioned his motives, wondering if it was merely a publicity stunt. Frustration bubbled beneath the surface as John's facade of confidence began to crack. Then came the pivotal moment. On a crisp autumn day, John invited Sam to his office to celebrate a significant local art auction. As they entered the penthouse, the contrast between their lives was stark. The slick surfaces of luxury clashed with the rough edges of life on the streets. "I'm going to be honest, Sam," John confessed, swallowing his pride. "This world is terrifying, and I'm scared." Sam gazed at him, those innocent eyes piercing through John's bravado. "But you're doing something good. That's what matters." In that moment, something shifted within John. Clarity pierced through the fog of anxiety. He understood that determination had to outweigh fear. He wasn't just saving himself through this scholarship. He aimed to uplift a child whose dreams mirrored his own faded aspirations. The battle was far from over, but this time, he wouldn't fight it alone. His first public appearance post-announcement would involve not only his speech, but also sharing the stage with Sam, an act of solidarity that mirrored their budding friendship. Yet, as John donned the familiar suit, an internal tempest brewed. A realization struck him. His vulnerability would soon be on display, his reputation teetering in the balance. Would this partnership withstand public scrutiny, or would they both be lost under the weight of those who questioned their intentions? The moment loomed ahead, pressing down on John's chest. The stakes felt higher than ever, and as he took a deep breath, he prepared to face not just the audience, but his own turbulent emotions. The time had come to confront a truth he could no longer escape. In this delicate dance of redemption, he was about to discover whether hope could truly bridge the distance between his tarnished past and a promising future. The event unfolded in a grand hall, the opulence of the setting contrasting starkly with John's emotional turmoil. As he stood backstage, weighted by the gravity of what lay ahead, he couldn't shake the feeling that every eye in the room was trained on him, poised to dissect his every move. This was his moment to shine, but it felt more like a trial than a celebration. The podium beckoned like a siren, and with every beat of his heart, his resolve felt thinner. John's thoughts spiraled. What if he flubbed his speech? What if they saw right through him? The voices, both internal and external, clanged in a relentless cadence. Yet, in the shadows, he could almost feel Sam's presence, that warm light of encouragement, grounding him like a steady anchor. As he stepped into the blinding spotlight, the audience's chatter turned to a hush. It felt surreal, standing before a sea of faces, familiar and foreign, drawn in by both his past and the promise of his future. He cleared his throat, forcing himself to breathe deeply, letting the inhalation quiet the storm within. "Good evening," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "I stand before you today not merely as a businessman, but as someone seeking redemption. In my journey to establish this art scholarship, I confront not just the scrutiny of public opinion, but the very truths that lie within me." The words spilled out, raw and unfiltered, each syllable echoing the truths he had wrestled with alone. He recounted his past, not with shame, but as a narrative interwoven with lessons learned and experiences that had shaped him. The crowd seemed to lean in closer, curiosity replacing skepticism. Then, he introduced Sam, gesturing toward the boy who stood nervously beside him, clutching a paintbrush as if it were a lifeline. "This is Sam," John said, pride swelling within him. "He's not just a beneficiary of this scholarship. He's a reminder of all that can still be created." John caught Sam's eye, and for a fleeting moment, their shared understanding kindled a spark of courage. He explained how their friendship had ignited an inspiration within him, bridging their disparate worlds through the universal language of art. "Art," he continued, "has the power to heal, to inspire, and to create opportunities where none seem to exist. It's not just about talent, it's about believing that dreams deserve a chance, even when they seem impossible." But as he spoke of dreams, doubt flickered in the periphery of his vision. He could see whispers forming among the journalists, their pens scuttling across paper as they noted every slip of his tongue, every pause that could be painted as uncertainty. Sam shifted, visibly uncomfortable in the spotlight, and John's heart ached with the overwhelming desire to protect this innocent spirit from the harsh gaze of the world. It was a pivotal moment. He could lean into the harshness of scrutiny or forge ahead with the hope they were building together. Together, Sam and I are here to show that change is possible. We are not just giving funding. We are creating a legacy of support, hope, and integrity. But make no mistake, this journey requires hard work and collective faith in one another. Those words hung in the air, a challenge to both his critics and himself. As he finished, a wave of applause washed over him, but doubt still lingered. Would this be enough? Could they truly change perceptions? Stepping away from the podium, John's heart raced. He felt the weight of their shared journey pressing on his chest. The applause blended with rising anxiety, a cacophony of hope and fear intertwined. He had revealed his past, but what of the future? Were they ready to carry this vulnerability into the world beyond this stage? With Sam at his side, he realized that their partnership would always be scrutinized, but there lay a deeper battle against his own insecurities. As they exited the stage, John's palms felt damp with trepidation, not just for what had happened, but what lay ahead. What if, in the days to come, the very people he sought to inspire turned against him? What would that mean for Sam, for the scholarship, for his own journey of redemption? The moment of truth beckoned, and John stood on the precipice of an uncertain future, his resolve tested once again. Would he find within himself the strength to carry on, or would the shadows of doubt prove too heavy to bear? The aftermath of the speech lingered, and John's thoughts raced like wild horses, galloping toward uncertainty. The applause that had felt like a warm embrace began to chill as he and Sam navigated through the crowd toward the exit. Each face that passed seemed to offer a silent judgment, their expressions flickering between admiration and skepticism. John's mind spiraled once more into a torrent of doubt. Had he truly reached them, or had he merely fed the flames of gossip about his past? Once outside, the cool night air was bracing, almost sharp against his skin. Sam's small figure shuffled beside him. John stole a glance at the boy and saw a reflection of himself, wide-eyed with a mixture of hope and fear. The stark reality of their journey began to weigh on him like an anchor. "Did they like it?" Sam asked, his voice barely a whisper, as if afraid of the answer. John hesitated, wrestling with the truth. "I think they will come around," he finally replied, forcing optimism into his tone, though the certainty eluded him. They sat on a low stone wall under the glow of streetlights. John stared into the distance, watching shadows dance against the background of the city, a living, breathing testament to countless stories. "Sam," he began, searching for the right words, "I want you to know this isn't just about the scholarship. It's about us and what we can create together. We have to keep pushing forward no matter how difficult it feels." Sam nodded, but John could see the uncertainty still clouding his eyes. The reality was that they were not merely forging a path for themselves, but for many others who felt trapped by their circumstances. A surge of responsibility surged through John. He had ignited a flame, but now he needed to feed it. Now, with every step he'd taken into the public eye, the stakes had risen. John's past mistakes were no longer just his. They had transformed into a collective judgment that loomed over both him and Sam. The weight of expectation was both exhilarating and suffocating. "John, what if they don't see? What if they don't believe?" Sam's voice trembled, slicing through John's musing thoughts. John turned to face him, determination igniting within. "Then we show them. We live our truth loudly. And in doing so, we inspire others to do the same. But it won't be easy. There will be roadblocks, skepticism, maybe even failure. That's a part of our journey." Sam's eyes sparkled, not with certainty but with curiosity. "How do we start?" They could begin with small but strategic moves, John thought. "Let's outline how we'll spend the funds from the scholarship. We'll develop workshops, connect with local artists, and invite people to share their stories. We'll build a community around art, making it accessible, desirable, and seen as a pathway to a brighter future." A flicker of excitement replaced Sam's doubt. "And what if it works?" "Then we amplify it," John said, envisioning the possibilities. "We'll document every success and hurdle, proving that change is tangible. We'll invite those who are hesitant to witness the transformation firsthand." With renewed purpose, they returned to the hall, a place where ideas had been born and hopes stirred. John needed to commit to this course charted between them. As they re-entered the building, the energy pulsed differently. This time, it was charged with potential. "Let's get to work," John declared, stepping back into the chaos of expectations with a newfound resolve. Yet one nagging question hovered persistently. Had he truly escaped the judgment of his past? Facing the harsh reality felt imminent. A confrontation with critics and skeptics was knocking on the door. What awaited him on the other side would not only test his newfound commitment, but also challenge the very concept of redemption he so desperately sought. Would he rise to meet the challenge, or would he falter once more in the face of scrutiny? The path ahead twisted into the shadows of doubt once more, and John had to decide if he would stand firm or fracture under the weight of possibility. The moment they stepped back inside, the atmosphere felt electric, yet thick with an unshakable tension. John inhaled deeply, preparing for the oncoming storm of emotions and critiques. His gaze swept across the room, the murals that decorated the walls, the vibrant paintings hung haphazardly, and the diverse crowd that mingled, each individual lost in their ambitions and doubts. He was acutely aware that their expectations now intertwined with his own, a precarious web he had woven through mere words. "Let's start mapping this out," John said, drawing Sam into focus as they moved to a quieter corner filled with a few scattered tables. The sharp lines of his thoughts began crystallizing as he visualized their approach. But as sketches on paper morphed into future realities, an unsettling voice nagged in the back of his mind. Was this enough? Could they truly survive the scrutiny awaiting them, not just from outsiders but from themselves. As John grabbed a pen and paper, his hands trembled, reflecting a mixture of determination and fear. He wrote, "Workshops," but the word felt inadequate. What kind of workshops? "Skill development," he mumbled under his breath, trying to isolate his thoughts. "Art, as a therapeutic process." Sam looked on curiously, and for a fleeting moment, John felt a flicker of clarity. This was not merely about art. It was about redemption, about building resilience within those who felt trapped, including himself. "John?" Sam interrupted suddenly. "What about the people who might laugh at us? What if they say we can't do it?" A chill swept through John. He had grappled with the same thought. Then we confront them. We turn criticism into motivation. Some impulse drove him, igniting a spark in his core. Let's reach out to local artists and community leaders. Engage them even before we launch anything. Gather insight, feedback, and support. Let them see that there's power and vulnerability in sharing our journeys. As they sketched out their plan, John began to understand that he was not merely creating a project, but unraveling layers of himself, his fears, hopes, and the shadows of his past. Each item on the list became a touchstone of his commitment to growth. They would need a platform for sharing stories, a gallery of truths, a social experiment in trust that would allow others to step forward along with him. Yet, doubt surged again. What if this bold step made his failures more public? What if he stumbled right in front of everyone? The gravity of his past loomed like a specter, whispering its reminders of inadequacy. But as he shared his thoughts with Sam, he sensed a transformation occurring within him. He realized he had faced adversity alone for too long. And now, standing beside Sam, their shared hopes formed a protective barrier. A glimmer of clarity pierced through his uncertainty. "We need to reach out to the media," he said with renewed vigor. "Let's create a story, not of pity, but of hope. Transform lives through our own transformations." "But what if they twist it?" Sam's voice edged with concern. John paused, weighing the risk against the potential impact. "Then we prepare for that," he asserted. "We own our narrative. Nothing matters more than authenticity. Our experiences, however flawed, can resonate with others facing similar battles, and we carry that truth forward." In that realization, something fundamental shifted within John. It was a step toward his own acceptance. He was not a failed artist. He was a storyteller, wielding art as a tool for change. It wasn't merely about his past, but about the power he held to uplift others on the brink. But deep down, a pang of insecurity lingered. Was his resolve enough? They continued developing their plans, drafting emails and follow-ups while brainstorming workshop ideas. Each keystroke marked a tiny victory against the relentless tide of self-doubt. Yet, as a sense of purpose enveloped him, John couldn't shake the feeling of approaching confrontation. The critics were not just external, but echoed from within. A relentless barrage that demanded more from him at every turn. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Are we ready for this?" "Ready for what?" Sam asked, genuinely puzzled. "Ready for the world to really see us." The weight of that acknowledgement hung heavily in the air. As their work continued, a spark of determination ignited between them, burning brighter with every jotted idea. It was a battle against the ghosts of his past, a prelude to a confrontation with those skeptics he would face both in the real world and within himself. The moment of truth was fast approaching. John felt it in his bones. He had a growing realization that this journey was not just about survival. It was about embracing who he was and might yet become. But could his past mistakes be truly reconciled in the eyes of others? A call to arms beckoned as John prepared to face a world that would not hold back its judgments. And he knew, whatever lay ahead, he had to be ready for the challenge. As the days slipped by, John felt the weight of anticipation burdening him. An undercurrent of anxiety pooled in his stomach. Every morning, he sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, staring blankly at the screen. Emails to local artists and community leaders awaited his words, but the confidence that surged within him days ago began to ebb, retreating in the face of an unfamiliar resistance. Just right, he told himself, fingers hovering above the keys. Yet despite his resolve, self-doubt gripped him like a vice. The looming potential for rejection, for ridicule, echoed in every unhinged thought. They were watching, judging, waiting to pounce. The next day, he tried again. John found himself at a local cafe, nestled among the clattering cups and murmurs of conversation. The atmosphere teemed with creativity, and art hung willfully on the walls, pieces crafted with what looked like both affection and pain. But even the rich aroma of coffee did little to shake the heaviness in his chest. The barista's cheerful banter didn't penetrate the echo chamber of his anxiety. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, as he stared aimlessly at the menu. "Just coffee," he managed, forcing a smile as he ordered. While waiting, his gaze drifted to a mural, a bold explosion of color set against stark white, a roguish dance of chaos and beauty. It felt intimately familiar, reflecting the war between doubt and determination he fought within himself. That night, in the quiet of his apartment, John opened up his sketchbook. It was time to explore, to translate this tension into something tangible. Bold strokes captured the turbulence of his emotions, each aggressive line marking a step through frustration and fear, ultimately yielding a discovered beauty in vulnerability. He remembered the conversations with Sam, how they spoke of storytelling, of possible transformations yet to unfold. This eye-opening moment reminded him that above all, art could be the canvas for healing, for connection. "People need to see this," John murmured to himself. The exhilaration of creation ignited a flicker of hope, enough to encourage him to pull up his emails again. He crafted a message to a prominent local artist whose work moved him deeply, a voice he respected, built on sincerity and authentic emotion. With every word he typed, he began embracing the idea that opening up this conversation about struggles was more important than fearing judgment. "Hello, my name is John," he began, summoning every ounce of courage. "I'm starting a project centered on storytelling through art as a form of healing." Each sentence felt like a declaration, a commitment to move forward despite the invisible chains of doubt threatening to bind him. After hitting send, his heart raced. He had taken a step forward, initiating a risk that challenged every instinct to retreat. But as his fingers clenched nervously around an empty coffee cup, John felt an unsettling surge of exhilaration flood through him. This was not just an outreach. It was a consecration of his journey, a recognition of his narrative's significance. Just as a sense of calm began to settle in, his phone buzzed with a reply. John's breath caught as he read, "I'd love to hear more about your vision. Let's set up a time to chat." A moment of disbelief washed over him before the weight of a burgeoning excitement settled in place. This wasn't just a response. It felt like validation, a bridge to connect his inner turmoil with a world that might, at least for a moment, understand. But then, another voice rose from the depths of his mind, clawing at him. Congratulations turned into judgments. What if you disappoint? What if this connection leads to more criticism? Reckoning with that thought, John understood the path ahead would test every facet of his determination. He wasn't just paving the way for a project. He was confronting the ghosts of his past, not to defeat them, but to own them, to shape his narrative with conviction. As he prepared to draft his next steps and work out the details for the meeting, the day loomed closer when he would have to reveal himself fully, shadows and all. And even as he doused the flickering urges of self-doubt with determination, a new question emerged on the horizon. If he faced the judgmental eyes of a world unfamiliar with his story, could he stand in the light of his truth without cringing? The path stretched ahead, filled with potential triumphs and pitfalls. John knew he was now on the brink, a threshold of transformation. The next step would determine everything. Would he walk through the door or let it close behind him? The morning of the meeting dawned bright and relentless, forcing John to confront the vibrations of uncertainty clawing at him. As he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt, crisp but somehow lacking the edge he desired, he felt a wave of nausea rising at the thought of sharing his vision, raw and unrefined. Each fleeting thought whispered doubts. Maybe he wasn't ready. Maybe this was too soon. "Pull it together," he murmured, focusing on the reflection staring back. This was all part of the journey, wasn't it? He straightened his posture, a faint glimmer of resolve igniting within him. His phone chimed again, a reminder of their planned meeting. He took a deep breath before forcing his lips into a tentative smile as he stepped out into the world. The cafe where they agreed to meet was ablaze with the midday sun. The atmosphere buzzed around him, filled with the laughter of old friends and focus of those entrenched in their own pursuits. The warmth enveloped him, a stark contrast to the cold knot in his stomach. Arriving early, he chose a table by the window, a choice of transparency and vulnerability. As he waited, John allowed himself a moment of reflection, sketching out his thoughts on a napkin. There was weight to his message, a power he needed to harness. The connection between storytelling and healing lingered, shimmering just out of reach. He envisioned an exchange of ideas that inspired healing through candid narratives, the very essence of humanity. When she arrived, the artist exuded confidence and curiosity, her eyes sparkling with insight. They exchanged pleasantries, small talk lacing the air as he struggled to find a foothold in the conversation. But beneath the surface chatter, John sensed a gravitational pull toward authenticity, as if her presence alone challenged him to unfurl his truth. "What inspired you to reach out?" she asked, her voice hopeful yet probing. The question hung in the air, pressing against his chest. Here was his chance. One moment to either step into the light or retreat into obscurity. "I believe art can envelop suffering, turn it into something profound," he began, his voice trembling slightly but steadily growing stronger. "I want to gather stories of personal struggles, real experiences. I want to expose the raw emotion that connects us," he clarified, feeling a surge of conviction. She leaned forward, an intrigued expression dancing across her features. "There's incredible potential in that. But why do you feel compelled to tackle this area?" At that moment, John realized the question was not only about the project, it was inherently personal. Bracing himself against the wave of vulnerability, he replied, "Because I've battled my own demons. I've felt the isolation they bring, and I think by sharing our stories, we can break that, find unity in our truths." A silence fell as understanding settled, a moment where the barriers between him and the artist evaporated. This was not just about his endeavor. It was a shared revelation, an exploration of pain and vulnerability. They moved from the precarious edges of his idea to a dialogue that sparked creativity, a testament to what art could embody. The more he spoke, the more ideas unraveled, mingling with her perspectives. John, fueled by the synergy of their conversation, felt the weight of self-doubt begin to dissipate, replaced by the exhilarating surge of collaboration. Every idea exchanged was a step deeper into the territory of expression, proving to him what he had feared. He didn't have to navigate this path alone, but as he dove deeper into the possibilities of the project, an unsettling thought lingered. These revelations, this openness, would require him to strip away layers he had long concealed. What if the very truths he shared evoked more pain than connection? What if his raw honesty left him exposed, vulnerable to the scrutiny he had feared? As the meeting came to a close, John felt invigorated yet daunted. They had paved the way for inspiration, igniting embers that could forge a fire of connection. But now, the real work loomed ahead. Facing his own story and harnessing its power would demand everything he had. He stood to leave, exchanging goodbyes and promising to keep in touch. But the gnawing doubt returned. Could he truly craft these narratives without losing himself in the vulnerability? The flicker of excitement clashed with the haunting shadows of uncertainty. Each step away felt like moving towards an uncertain future. The walls he'd built were crumbling, but now a question lingered on his mind. Could he balance the act of authenticity with the preservation of his heart? Each moment ahead beckoned him further into his journey, demanding he answer for himself. Would he embrace the open wound, or let it fester unused? With this thought anchoring his resolve, John stepped out into a world filled with possibility. But as he walked away from the cafe, a chilling realization washed over him. He was on the threshold of a reckoning. What had he truly signed up for? As John roamed aimlessly through the streets after leaving the cafe, the vibrant buzz of the city felt distant, muffled by the dense fog of his thoughts. Each step echoed the weight of his newfound resolve, yet uncertainty clung to him like a stubborn shadow. The possibilities were endless, yet the vastness of what lay ahead was both daunting and exhilarating. He found himself meandering into a park, where the afternoon sun filtered through lush canopies, casting playful patterns on the ground. Seating himself on a weathered bench, he fished out the napkin he'd scribbled on earlier, its simplicity contrasting with the complexity of the thoughts swirling in his mind. The stark ink lines formed a tapestry of ideas, yet the edges were ragged, reflecting his inner turmoil. Here he was, poised to share stories of pain and healing, yet he hadn't even fully confronted his own. John clenched the napkin in his fist. What fueled his desire to pursue these narratives? Was it altruism or merely a desperate attempt to connect a fragmented part of himself? The question unraveled his thoughts, pulling at strands of anxiety. He hesitated, wondering if his own experiences were worthy of expression. Should he even begin to share them? What if the act of unveiling his truths made him inadequate or vulnerable to judgment? A child's laughter broke through his spiraling contemplations, drawing his attention to a small group nearby. A boy, no older than 10, was performing dog tricks with a scruffy terrier, a bright smile illuminating his dirt-smudged face. The joy radiating from him stood in stark contrast to John's inner chaos. The boy exuded authenticity, unfettered by societal expectations, and John felt an inexplicable connection. What stories lay behind that radiant smile? In that moment, something shifted within John. Inspired by the child's carefree spirit, he remembered why he had embarked on this path in the first place. It was about connection, finding unity through shared experiences. The realization wrapped around him, urging him to confront his own authenticity. He could not ask others to reveal their truths if he was unwilling to do the same. Determined, he began to jot notes on his napkin once more, etching the thoughts that arose from the wellspring of emotions bubbling within. He was ready to tackle his own story, to sift through the darkness and pull forth the threads that could bring light. Crafting narratives was more than gathering others' struggles. It was about reflecting upon his own journey, the pain, the growth, the lessons learned. But as he penned his thoughts, a chilling realization struck him. Would sharing his own narrative hold the transformative power he envisioned? Or would it unravel him piece by piece? The idea of peeling back the layers felt like exposing his very soul, a gamble he had to make. Rising from the bench, John felt a decision crystallizing within him, a call to action nestled deep in his consciousness. He would embrace his fears and share not only the heartwarming tales of strength he sought to gather, but also the vulnerability of his own experience. He would become a participant in the narratives he intended to frame, a collaboration with the souls that dared to share alongside him. The park felt alive as John strode forward, intent on uncovering real stories that resonated with the depth of human experience. It was time to confront his past and embrace the discomfort that existed in authenticity and vulnerability. As he headed home, a strange wave of calm washed over him, but nagging doubts lingered. Would these acts of openness draw others to him, or would they push people away? How much of himself was he truly willing to expose in this quest for connection? With each step, John understood he was on an inevitable collision course with the truth, his own truth, and its haunting echoes. But what he didn't know as he delved deeper into this endeavor was how dramatically this exploration would unfold, leading him to confront unsettling truths he had never anticipated. The streets felt both inviting and dangerous, opening up to an unpredictable journey ahead. As he approached his apartment, a single thought flashed across his mind. Was he ready for what lay beyond this threshold? The door opened to the unknown, but this time, he felt ready to step through. The transformative path he had chosen loomed ahead, filled with potential yet tinged with uncertainty. The reckoning had just begun. As John stepped into his apartment, a flurry of emotions engulfed him. The familiar clutter strewn across the space now felt like a physical representation of his chaotic thoughts. He closed the door, locking out the world, but his mind was far from quiet. Could he truly embrace his past and use it as a springboard for connection? He dropped his bag onto the floor and moved to the small desk tucked in the corner, littered with papers and notebooks filled with half-formed ideas. He opened a fresh page in one of the notebooks, but uncertainty halted his pen. What would he write? A compelling narrative, or a feeble attempt to divulge his vulnerabilities? He clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling in his chest. His aspirations stood in stark contrast to the doubts tightening their grip around him. John recalled the boy in the park, a beacon of innocence and joy amidst his turmoil. Would sharing his narrative evoke that same sense of authenticity he witnessed in the child? Or would it expose his inadequacies, feeding the very fears he sought to overcome? He needed to confront these questions head-on. The longer he delayed, the more oppressive his thoughts became. Taking a deep breath, he pushed aside the clutter on his desk, revealing a blank canvas awaiting creation. He opened his notebook and began writing, the pen scratching against the page like a lifeline pulling him from his spiraling thoughts. He poured out fragments of his history, the heartbreaks, the moments of despair, and the flickers of hope that still resided within him. Each word was a step he was taking toward vulnerability. He hesitated at certain points, the shadows of self-doubt whispering in his ear. What if someone read this? Would they judge him? Would they see him as weak? But he forced himself to push through, reminding himself that authenticity might inspire strength in others. He was no longer solely collecting stories. He was becoming part of the narrative, the sanctum of shared experiences that might just bridge emotional gaps. His writing morphed into imagery of his childhood, the scenes of laughter in the rain, the dull ache of loss during family rifts, and the moments of serenity spent under the stars. Until now, he had avoided confronting these memories, fearing their power over him. But the act of externalizing his thoughts began to diminish their hold. John paused, reading over his words, a sense of release mingling with the remnants of doubt. There was beauty in the struggle, he realized. While his narrative was flawed, it was undeniably real, a reflection of his journey, his humanity. As evening crept in, shadows settled around him, and he felt the weight of the narrative shift. Instead of feeling exposed, it began to feel empowering. Could he use his darkness as a catalyst for change, not just for himself, but for those who might relate to his experiences? The prospect ignited a flicker of hope within him. He would keep writing. Suddenly, thoughts surged in. The child in the park, while an inspiration, was not the only facet of his epiphany. Did he even know how to really connect? Stripped of pretense, would he have the courage to confront those who had hurt him? Was he prepared to reconnect with those past relationships to uncover deeper meanings and lessons? Determined, he took a deep breath, aware of the emotional terrain that lay before him. The journey was no longer about simple storytelling. It was about reconciling past traumas and reshaping them into lessons worth sharing. He recognized that this pursuit would demand more than just words. It would require soul-searching conversations and genuine connections with those he had distanced himself from. Feeling invigorated yet apprehensive, he set the pen down with purpose. With the first step taken, a strange wave of clarity washed over him. He was on the brink of something profound, a transformation that transcended mere narrative collection. What awaited him was an odyssey of truth, a quest to dig deeper, confront his past, and eventually reveal his findings to the world. As he stared at the unfinished page before him, a singular thought circled in his mind. Who were the people from his past that he needed to reach out to? The moment beckoned for connection, and the courage to initiate that contact seemed just within reach. But as he glanced at the phone resting nearby, uncertainty clouded his resolve once more. He knew he would have to face them soon, those haunting echoes of his past. And perhaps, even more unsettling, his own truth. A few weeks had passed since John's public speech with Sam, and he found himself wandering the same park where he had first confronted his doubts. Under the dappled shade of oak trees, he felt a growing sense of calm as he exchanged stories of triumph and resilience with emerging artists at the workshops they had initiated. The sound of laughter mingled with the brush of paint against canvas. It was an atmosphere thick with creativity, echoing with renewed purpose. In the weeks following their announcement, the community had indeed embraced their scholarship program. Their first event, the art gallery opening, was a resounding success. Local artists exhibited their pieces alongside students nurtured by the scholarship, and the event attracted not only art lovers, but also local media, drawn in by the authenticity of the effort. Surrounded by voices of encouragement, John finally understood the power of vulnerability. Every attempt he made to open up converted the shadowy weight of his past into light. As he spoke of failures and lessons learned, the clenching anxiety that used to grip him transformed into a palpable energy that pulsed through the room. Those artistic dialogues, inspired by the urge to uplift each other, were now bolstered by authenticity. John's willingness to share the intricate dance between his fear and hope was resonating far beyond their original goal. "Your journey has fueled me to create," one young artist told him, animatedly gesturing to her own painted collection. "You made it clear that vulnerability is not weakness. It's a canvas where we can reflect our true colors." In that moment, John's heart swelled with pride. This was the very transformation he had been working toward, not just his, but that of many others linked through a shared commitment to artistic expression. The concept of healing emerged anew. The scholarship wasn't merely financial aid. It had woven a safety net of collaboration that embraced stories both amusing and heartbreaking. Days turned into weeks, and those once distant memories of hurt became woven into the fabric of art they produced together. They learned that connection was rooted in authenticity. It was no longer merely about John rescuing another. The paradigm had shifted to mutual upliftment. He didn't have to navigate this path alone, and neither did any of them. As autumn air nipped playfully at the edges of their shared workspace, John sat down with Sam for their weekly brainstorming session. The boy had blossomed into a confident, aspiring artist, his sketches filling pages with imagination and hope. They sprawled various ideas across the table, discussing future events, outreach efforts, and more workshops. "Do you think we could do a collaborative mural soon?" Sam asked, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. John smiled, the same boyish excitement reflected in his own gaze. "Absolutely. Let's not just create art, let's create public art that speaks to our journey together. Families, people passing by will see it, and maybe it will spark inspiration." Feeling invigorated by this prospect, John drafted plans for the mural, envisioning how the colorful strokes would tell the story of resilience through shared experiences. A visual diary rooted in hope. As the groundwork for their mural began, a familiar sense of trepidation stirred in his chest. He decided it was finally time to address the shadows of his past. John reached out to those he had distanced himself from, inviting them into this newfound journey of art and healing. He arranged a small gathering, a precursor to what he hoped would be a larger reunion, inviting mentors and critics he had once feared would dismiss him. "It's time," he told Sam, looking into his eyes, "to face those who embodied my past and turn it into a collaborative future." The night of the gathering, John stood both anxious and resolute. As he welcomed each guest, he confronted not just those individuals, but the specters of insecurities that had tormented him for too long. In his speech, he laid bare his story, illustrating the fractured pieces of his past and the journey that had led him to this vibrant corner of the world. Each guest listened, no longer observers, but participants woven into the fabric of his transformation. The atmosphere shifted into one of warmth and encouragement, and questions instead of judgments filled the air. "Why is art crucial in shaping your narrative?" one asked. "Because art transcends," he replied, the answers flowing naturally now. "It converts pain into perspective. It promotes stories that deserve space, just like the ones we're creating here." That night, John felt an acceptance that had evaded him for so long. Each former skeptic now sat beside him, no longer standing in judgment but rather positioned as fellow travelers on a newly forged path. When John finally retired to his home, he reflected on the myriad transformations. A sense of solid confidence swept over him. He had emerged not as an invulnerable titan, but as a visionary grounded in his story, his vulnerabilities integrated. He picked up his phone and, with a single tap, released a post announcing their upcoming collaborative mural project. "Art is a reflection of our journeys," he wrote, "and I can't wait to see what we create together." This was it, the culmination of his evolution from a detached mogul to an engaged steward of transformation. In reconnecting with the essence of his humanity and sharing vulnerability, John had conquered the insecurities that once defined him. He had embraced and cultivated connection not only as a mentor, but as a participant in a broader narrative of healing and shared purpose. John was at last fully committed to his journey, standing tall in his recognition and fulfillment of what it meant to lead with authenticity. The journey would persist, and he knew it would continue to demand reflection and growth. But he was ready now, ready to commune with others through art, to elevate stories of struggle into beacons of hope. He had transformed and had taken significant strides towards the fulfillment of not just his own purpose, but toward the intertwining lives that were beginning to resonate with his. And as he gazed out onto the twinkling city lights, a confident smile spread across his face. The light, it seemed, was no longer distant for him. It was simply waiting to be embraced. You need to subscribe now to follow John's transformative journey and witness more powerful stories like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so more people can discover these inspiring narratives. Comment your reactions and theories about John's metamorphosis, and let's dive deeper into this journey together. Don't wait. Even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel the motivation and hope from these stories. Your support means everything in helping us spread these powerful messages.